Okay, so I have prepared one little agenda based on the document that the academic guys filled the a few days ago, and I'm basically going to talk about the basics, which are CSS, SAS, and SASE CSS, and then I'm going to move on how we can achieve a good layout design following some best practices. And also I'm going to talk about Flex and Grid, which are one of the main or the key features to achieve a good responsive design. And also we will discuss a little bit about the CSS units and the best practice for every unit. And also, and last thing, I'm going to talk briefly about the CSS frameworks or libraries that we have on the web, and obviously, and we can use it. Okay, so the first thing, the basics. So I guess that many of you know what is CSS, but for those who don't know, this basically is a design language that handles the look and feel of our web application. It's usually is commonly used combined with languages like HTML, and is very useful to style our application. Is the language that we can use for um, to style our application and to set what the final user can see. Okay, and then we have SAS, and SAS is not another different design language. SAS is a preprocessor language that is based on regular CSS, but it includes different or powerful features that CSS doesn't have by default. And we can have variables, nesting, and other features like mixins that we are going to see in a couple of minutes. And it's a powerful way to write our CSS into our application in a form that is that the code will be reusable and more readable by you in the future or by other developers if you are doing a shared project. And yeah, we also have SASE CSS or SCSS, which is a different SAS syntax that is based on regular CSS. It doesn't include uh, uh, I mean, SAS, it doesn't include like semicolons or brackets. You're going to see in a few seconds. And SAS, it follows the sorry, and SCSS follows the same syntax as the regular CSS. So as you can see in the examples, here we have a code which is developed in SAS, and as we can see, is almost the same like CSS, but it doesn't include brackets or semicolons. It uses indentation to denote code blocks, and these two preprocessor languages they are going to be transpiled on CSS when we are like executing our applications. So when, for example, this is an example of nesting that you can have different levels of elements in our CSS or HTML um, application, and you can do like indentation that you can define different child levels. And meanwhile, on regular CSS, you have to define every time that you want to get an item, you have to declare it each time. So CSS and SAS is SCSS, sorry, and SAS is kind of more reusable and more readable, and it will be your code will be better. So this was an example of indentation. You have also the possibility to declare variables here, which we can't do it on CSS. Okay, as you can see here, we are defining so one variable for the font family and also for the primary color. Then we are using it on the body element, but on the CSS you have to declare, for example, the font family or the primary color every time that you want to use it. And then you have more powerful features like mixins, for example, which is this one. The mixin in this case is the possibility um, to put like some properties, some CSS properties into one, let's call it a function. It doesn't work like a regular function, but it's like you can wrap different properties here and then use it in the elements you want later. And with regular CSS, you cannot do it. You have to declare I mean, each property every time you want to use it. So it includes more powerful features. So I think with SAS or with SASI CSS, um, you can develop a good reusable code. A good readable code is more yeah, readable for you in the future. And if you have like 50 lines of CSS code, it doesn't matter when you have, but when you have like 200 or 300 lines or even more, it begins it's going to be a kind of a mess code. So if you use SAS, it will help you a lot to have the code well structured or organized. Okay, so if you visit the official SAS page, you will find like a lot of examples and documentations. Yeah, we can check it here very quickly. So if we go to Learn SAS, for example, you will have a lot of yeah, a lot of code examples like variables, nesting. You can include partials. You can include like another modules on your application for styles, mixins, the one that I show you, and extend inheritance. And these are good and powerful features to include in your application instead of use regular CSS. Okay. All right. So let's go. Let's continue. Okay. So after the CSS and SAS topic, I want to introduce to how um, we can design, or how we can think about a good to achieve a good design on layout design on our application. The first thing I want to remark here is that when we are designing a web application, in most of the cases we're sometimes we think um, to design our application in a desktop resolution, and we think in our core content applied to a desktop or a full screen resolution. But there is like an approach which is to think more about the core content of our application. If we follow the progressive enhancement promise, um, we're going to think in our application from a very tiny screen. And if we think in this way, in a very tiny screen from, for example, a mobile device or a tablet, um, we will want to set the core content of our web application for this resolution, so we don't have too much space to put like other features that as if we use desktop resolution or another bigger resolutions. So this is not always easy to follow, but it's a good approach because it allows you to focus more on the core content of the application. If you go to a smaller screen and you want to put the minimum content that you want the user to see, and then go bigger and you can add more features like new modules for your application and another kind of stuff. And sometimes it's good to do the reverse kind of thinking. And then we have another point, which is the high definition graphics, that all the icons or all the images that you want to include you want to include in your web application, it should adapt to different resolutions. Okay, so using vector images like SVG or multiple image formats for the same image, it will allow you to get these well, the best results. I have implemented a very basic example here. Okay, so here you have one example of an image created with SFG, okay, with scalable vector graphics. And here you have an example of a very poor quality image. It's a PNG image, but I want to show you the comparison between these two. So if we made the screen, let's say, okay, if we made a screen very like smaller, you can see that the PNG more or less in this width is kind of good quality, but if we make the screen bigger, the PNG is not looking good because it has a very poor quality, and the SFG is always behaving good because it has an infinite resolution and is very scalable. So it's one of the advantages of the SFG that you can scale it to any kind of resolution, and they are just code. For example, the main difference from the classic PNGs or JPGs is that if we go to the URL, okay, we're going to see if we inspect the element that this is basically an image created by code here, okay? So it typically loads very fast. When we create an SFG, it loads very fast, compare with a regular PNG or JPG image is very the size of the file is very low compared to a typically PNG image or JPG. Okay, so I encourage all of you to use SVG images for the icons or for other kind of images that we want to include. Sometimes we don't have no other option just to include regular PNGs or JPGs pictures on our application. So there is more options to make this approach responsive. Okay, so for example, we have the image HTML element, we have the srcset property here, and what it does, this property here, is to set different kind of images for with dimensions. Okay, so for example, when we have here 800 width of pixels, this image will appear on the screen. But if we go to another smaller resolution of 480 pixels width, the image will display another image. Okay, so, I mean the element it will be displayed another image, so we can see it here. So this an example I took from the web. So actually we are on, if we look here, we are on 1000. Well, this is too big, we're going to do it smaller, but if we reach 800, we will see that the image change, and it's the same image, but it's like cropped. It's like a different approach of the same image. So this is kind of some tricks that we can use to have like responsive design when we are handling images of like PNGs or JPGs. Is kind of different. Okay, so yeah, and so as you can see, we have the main SRC element, which is the direction, the relative path of the image. And as I said earlier, you can define all the alternative images that you want to show if we define here different widths of the image are just like this is an example. So yeah, you can do it as hard as you want. Okay, so let's continue. Mm-mm. Okay, another key concepts of the layout design are Flexbox and Grid. These are two powerful CSS3 modules that you can. This is one of the best of the most important features in order to achieve responsive design on your web application. I'm going to show you a few examples in a couple of minutes. So we will get back on that. But also I want I want to talk about media queries that the media queries are, I think all of you may know about it. But they are used to target like multiple device resolutions. You can set a specific minimum width or minimum height, and you can set some specific CSS properties to each resolution. So you can create intervals, and is one of the most used features for to achieve a responsive design. Okay, so and then we have the conditional rendering. So the conditional rendering, you can achieve that. For example, if you use the Vue framework, you can use the viewport width. You can use the viewport dimensions or the dimensions, and you can conditionally do like if you match some width, some screen width, that the block you can set it to display or you cannot, and you cannot show it. Okay, so it's better if we don't show the blocks or the code in the DOM element. Okay, maybe it's better to not show in it than put it to display none, for example. But this is just another option that we have. And okay, we're going now to do a live example of Flex and Grid, and just to comment on that Grid is a powerful feature that we can create bidimensional layouts based on column and rows, and we can set the main structure of our web application. It's recommended for large size layouts. It's recommended for style or align the main layout of our applications. Okay, meanwhile, Flexbox is more efficient to lay out the components or the intersection of our application. The main difference between Flex and Grid is that Flex is unidimensional. You can only position the elements in a row or in a column way each time. Okay, and with Grid you can position the elements making rows and making column as well. So the best way to work with Grid and with Flex is to combine them. Okay, so we are going to do an example, and you will see how it works. Okay. So yeah, I have created a very basic application, which is this. So as you can see, there's no styles here, just only silly background colors. We are going to style with Grid the main layout of our application. So let's see. Okay, so let's see that we want to have this layout. Okay, we want to have a header, we want to have a sidebar, we want to have the main content of our application, and then we want to have a footer here. Okay, so if we follow the grid system, we will have to get uh, two columns. Okay, because we have the sidebar at the same level of the main content, and we will have like 3 rows, one for the header, one for the sidebar and the main content, and one for the footer. So in total, we will have 6 elements. Okay, so I'm going to split the screen to the middle here. Okay, and this to the other half. Okay, nice. So as you can see on the code, I have the main selector, which is the main layout here, and I have the 4 elements. Okay, and each element has, well, some silly elements, inner elements here, like text or some subsections here, like in the case of main. Okay, so if we want to apply grid here, we have to go to the main layout, and we have to put the display to grid. Okay, and okay, we have to define the columns that we want, the grid columns, grid template columns. Okay, and if we go back to the design that we did, and we want to have like 2 columns. Let's say that the first one will be like 30 or even 20% of the screen. Okay, and the other column, let's say that we want to have the other remaining space of the screen. So let's put it to auto. Okay, so now we are defining the 2 columns that we want the grid system to have. So let's set the rows now, and let's see that okay, well, this is the width of the columns. Okay, we're setting the width of the column, and for the rows we are going to set the height. So for example, let's put 50 pixels to the first row. Okay, let's set auto for the inner row, and then 50 for the footer. Okay, and then what we have to do is to set the areas grid template areas. Now we are going to set which element is going to be in each of the areas. Okay, so we are going to set it like this. We're going to put a very brief identifier for the header. We're going to set HD for the header. So the first row, it will be uh, it will be filled by the header, and the second column, sorry, of the first row as well. So we're going to put header and header. Then we're going to add a line break just to be more readable here. And let's put it here that we are going to have the sidebar and then the main content, which it will be the second row and the first column and the second column. Okay, and for the third row we're going to set the footer. Okay, and the footer as well. Okay, nice. So let's see how it is. Okay, now is breaking because we didn't set what element of our HTML is corresponding to these names. So what we have to do is to set, for example, the header to the grid area here as HD. So for the aside, which will be the sidebar, we're going to set it grid area sidebar, and the main, going to see the main content. I think I call it, yeah, main content. And for the footer, we're going to set here the footer. Okay, so if we save, as you can see, the layout changes, and it's behaving now good. So first we have the header here, then the sidebar at the left, the main content here, and at last we have the footer, which is this kind of layout that we first thought about it. Okay, so okay, this is a very basic example about how we can use grid very easy and fast. But what about flex? Let's see that we want to give some aligning styles to the inner elements that we have on the first element, which is header. So let's say that we want to use flex. We are going to display flex here. Okay, and if we save, we are seeing that this is changing now. Okay, so flex is applying now, and if we want to center the elements, we'll have to set the justify content here to the center. And if we save, whoop, yeah, justify content center. Okay, we have to set the justify, no, the flex direction, sorry. We have to say that the flex direction should be in a row, because as I said earlier, the flex is only working on a unidimensional flow, which is the row or a column. So in this case, we want to have a row here. Okay, so we are putting the flex direction in a row. We have to center in the items within the whole width, okay, of the parent element, and we also can align the items vertically. Okay, so they are aligned vertically. So this is a very basic example about how we can align the items with flex. Let's say that we want to align the items inside of on the main content area. Okay. Okay, let's say that we want to display flex here. Okay, well, no worries, because this is already crashing a little bit. We want to have, okay, the justify content, we want to put it to the center. Okay. Let's put a flex wrap property that basically what it does is that all the items, they will be contained in each line. Okay. And we have to set, more important thing is that we have to set the width of every item. Okay, so let's see that we want to each item to have like the first 50% of the width of the parent element. Okay. Well, I'm just going to delete the justify content. Okay, and as you can see, we have set the elements like 2 elements per row. Okay, let's put it very less width, and let's set a space between each element. Okay, here we go. So as you can see, we can do like every kind of alignment in column on in row based, and it's very easy. And we can put it to be 33% each element, and the flex is going to put in the first row all the items that has 33% of the width, and if we put 25, all the elements will be in one row. Okay, so it's kind of playing with the items width, and you will achieve the layout that you want. So, and the most important thing is that, well, let's set it to 48. The most important thing is that this is very responsive. This is one of the main advantages that Flex and Grid has, that you can create any layout that you want, and with Grid and with Flex is behaving very good. Let's put it to with this. Whoop. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and okay, so we are going to do the last example with Flex. As you can see, it's very It's very easy and fast to do it. We're going to do it for the footer for these two elements. Okay, we're going to use display flex. We're going to set the flex direction, which will be in this case row. Okay, and let's see that we want to have the elements centered. Okay, and also we want to align it vertically. Okay, and as you can see, the items get aligned oops, very easy and fast with Flex. So grid is more is the grid. You can use it for the main layout. So as you can see, if I inspect this code in the main layout, you can see the dotted lines that has every element. So it's basically the design that we first thought about it. And it's you can use grid for the main layout design, and then you can use flex for align every item, every inner content, or every inner section of your application, because it's really fast and it's better to use them combined. Okay, so well, I encourage all of you to practice in a very basic application with grid and with flex, because it's very easy to do examples, and you will get you will learn quite fast how to use it. Okay, and yeah, I think we can continue. We can move on to the CSS units. I'm going to go back to present mode. Okay, so when we want to talk about CSS units, we have two types of units. We have the absolute units and the relative units. On the absolute units, we have the basics units of pixels, centimeters, millimeters. Okay, and then we have the relative units that are those flexible in size, and it will help us to design or to apply styles to the websites and get that responsive way that we want to achieve. Okay, so the first unit that we want to talk about is EM. This is a unit which is a relative unit, and it's assigned depending on the font size of the parent element. And then we have rem, which is mostly the same, but is depending on the font size of the root element. So if we go back to the example, I'm going to do I'm going to do an example with EM. Okay. So let's say that on the main layout, well, on the header element, sorry, we are defining that the font size for all the elements inside the header is of 16 pixels. So on every inner item of the header, if we set, for example, the font size to be 1 EM, okay, we are setting that the font size is the same font size of the header. So if we go to the computed panel, we're seeing that the font size is 16 and for this element. And if we change the font size on the header, and let's put it for like 20, we can see that on the child, the computed font size is 20. So it's always inheriting the property from the parent. Okay, so rem is working also like that, but instead with the parent is going to work with the root element of the application, which is usually HTML. So if we set the HTML element on a font size of 35 pixels, for example, and we set that the home element, well, that the P element, which is the first child of the header, let's say that is 1 rem, okay, we can see that the font size is 35. So it's inheriting the font size of the root element. So if we put 2 rems, we're gonna get the double. Okay, so we're gonna get 70 pixels. And what is the advantage here? Instead of using pixels and using EMs or REMs, that here you will have you have to define, you will have just only to define what font size you want to use on the HTML element, I mean on the root element, or if you use EMs on the parent element, and you don't have to define every time that you want to set a font size of an element the exact amount of pixels. Okay, this is just more than a standard, than a very incredible feature. This is just a standard that if you want to follow, just follow it. Is recommended to do it this way because you only have to define here the amount of pixels of the parent if you use EM, or of all the root if you use REM. Okay, and yeah, then we have percentages, which are relative to the same property of the parent element as we did with these inner boxes that we were setting the width. For example, the 48%, this is relative to the width of the parent. Okay, so this is a really good unit to work with a responsive design, because the boxes here are really behaving well. Okay. And then we have the viewport percentage units that you can find here: the viewport width, the viewport height, and the viewport minimum and maximum units. And they are depending on the viewport height and width size. Okay. So if we said that, for example, we have the main layout, and if we want to put it to, okay, the width for the main layout is 1% of the viewport width, which the viewport width is a full screen. Okay. We are getting that the viewport in this case is just the 1% of the total. Well, it's not working too good in this example, but okay, let's try with 50, maybe it's better. Okay, yeah, as you can see, the viewport width is all the screen, and we are setting the main layout to the half of the screen if we use the viewport units. We can set as well the font size with the viewport, but I think we have to use the media queries to control that behavior. We can put that the home the home element, the P element, to be font size, let's see, 5 viewport width. Okay, and if we resize, you can see that all these elements are adapting their font size according to the viewport width. Okay, but well, it's more recommended to do the font size with REM or EM, and if you do with viewport, I think you have to use media queries. Okay. And yeah, I'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so these are a very summary of what I explained earlier, how we can use font sizes with M or REM or REM, and how we can use padding and margin that I didn't talk about it, but we can use EM as well based on the font size element of the parent, or with pixels as well. And yeah, and this is a very good point, because if we use EM for on an element, and we declare the parent and the margin with EM also, the space around will change according the font size of the element. Okay. And also the viewport units, you can use it anywhere, but it's more used on the main layout of the application, when we are, for example, defining the full responsive grid, the initial grid or layout of the application, and also the percentages as I said earlier, is they are used for creating responsive layouts for the inner elements. Okay. So these are some of the best practices you can follow. Obviously, you can practice on your own and find what is the better for you. But these are just best recommended practices. Okay. And yeah, then we have frameworks and libraries that you can use if you want to, if you don't want to get too stuck with the styles, you can get the help of some frameworks or some libraries, for example, Bootstrap or Materialize. The Bootstrap, I think, is one of the most famous frameworks um, because it has like a lot of years and is very well supported by the community. You have like multiple templates and components built in CSS, and you have JavaScript features, and you can create a very in a very easy way responsive web applications. Okay, so let's go to the Bootstrap page. Okay, Bootstrap. Okay, and yeah, let's go to some examples that they have. For example, yeah, the checkout form. So these are the styles that Bootstrap has. When you install the library, if you want to put some inputs, of if you want to put some buttons or some different elements, for example, a checkbox, a radio button, you will inherit the styles that Bootstrap has defined on the library, okay? And also you will have also the jQuery, the JavaScript code, for example, for validation. If you hit on the form and there are a lot of inputs to fill, you will get some errors, and this is already did uh, uh, JavaScript is doing this. So you are not importing all the CSS. You're importing CSS with JavaScript. Okay, so it has a lot of features and is very good. And the same with Materialize. Materialize is Materialize. Okay. So Materialize is another framework. It works kind of the same like Bootstrap, but it has different styles. Okay, it's based on material design, which is a design from Google, a design standard that Google developed a few years ago, and it has a lot of themes and components like Bootstraps, for example, but with other kind of styles. Okay, and it also has JavaScript integrated with a lot of functionalities, and this kind of frameworks, it maybe looks a little bit complex or difficult at the beginning, but is the workflow is really easy. You install the library on your project, and then you can include the element, the component you want to use, and set the specific classes, and the library will style every component that you put here. Okay, with related to the class that you enter. And well, I recommend to do the styles and do the styles of every component on your own, because it's the best way to learn how CSS works and how to style an application. But if you don't, I mean, if you don't want to get too complex on the styles, you can use these frameworks. Okay, so you can also have a Tailwind framework or Skeleton, which are some very light frameworks. They are only based on CSS. They don't include, I think they don't include JavaScript, so they are more light. and a little bit easy to follow. For example, if you go to skeleton, okay. Okay, so the components are really basic. They don't have the like a lot of styles, for example, that Bootstrap or Materialize has. And they has like components like this, like the buttons and the forms. They have the basic components. Okay, so if you want to do another complex component, maybe you will have to create it on your own using the main styles of the framework, but you will have to deploy it on your own. But yeah, these are some alternative tools that we can use in order to get a responsive design for our web application. But I think um, if you want to learn how to create a good responsive design, if you follow most of these practices, I think you will achieve it, and it's not too difficult. And one of the key feature of the main features is flex and grid. This is very useful because this is one of the best way to create well responsive elements for your applications.